Hello weirdos and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing a book haul. This is like my birthday book haul because it was my birthday. So we went to this bookstore in Colorado because we were not traveling, more like rescue mission. Anyway, so we went to Tattered Covered Bookstore, and I got some bookmarks because I got a bunch of books. Most of these books I got on sale because I am my grandfather's granddaughter. And yeah, I actually only brought one book full price, and you'll see what that is, I think, towards the end of the video or the end of the book video. We're gonna start with the books that don't have any audiobooks. The first one I got is A Woman's Work. It's a novel, The Storied Life of Pioneer Esther Morris, the world's first female justice of the peace, by Marion Betancourt. And I didn't really know much about picking this up. My mom recommended it to me because we were all at this bookstore. I don't really know much about this. This doesn't have an audiobook, obviously, but I read on the back, and it's gonna tackle things like abolition, Western expansion, railroads, the Civil War, and women's suffrage. So I'm guessing that this is gonna be start maybe in like the early 1800s to like the I don't know, 1830s or something like that. But that makes me really excited because I really like that era of history in particular. I'm really interested to see how they specifically tackle some of the themes of that, and I don't know who Esther Morris is, and so probably going to be doing research about that lady once I finish this book. The second book I picked up that does not have an audiobook is God's Red Sun, The Ghost Dance, Religion, and the Making of Modern America by Louis S. Warren. Ghost Dance is so fascinating. I'm so excited to read more about Wovoka in this. I really hope it touches on him. I just saw that this dealt with the Ghost Dance. It's just more research for that similar era of history, although technically it's probably going to touch on more of the stuff that happens in the late 1800s because Ghost Dance was 1890. I'm just, oh, this sounds right up my alley. I'm so excited to see like what this says about Wovoka and how the influence of the Ghost Dance spread from tribe to tribe in the West, and really to see how it was practiced. I know a little bit about like the history, and like I've studied the history a little bit in my anthropology classes, but I haven't learned a lot about the actual like practicing of the Ghost Dance religion. It's like a religion that is a direct result of colonization and the push west in American history. And so yeah, it's just an intersection of a bunch of really complicated things in American history, and I'm very excited to read this. The next book I got is my mom showed me this book, and it was like, okay, I don't need to know anything about it, I'm going to get it. And that is The Long Pursuit, Abraham Lincoln's 30-year struggle with Stephen Douglas for the heart and soul of America by Roy Morris Jr. And Abraham Lincoln, basically any book on Abraham Lincoln that I don't have that looks remotely interesting, I'm gonna pick up within reason, now that I actually know exactly which books about Lincoln I have. The whole Lincoln Douglas debates are famous, and I don't know if it's going to talk specifically about well, I mean, it is going to talk about specifically the debates, but I don't know if it's going to go beyond that, beyond their debating time and debating circuit in Illinois. This sounds like a really interesting book and something that is right up my alley for things that I'm personally interested in. So I'm excited to get to this one too. Again, this is the last of the books that I got that do not have an audiobook. Now we're going into the books that do have audiobooks. So the book I got is Killers of the Flower Moon, The Ostage Murders and the Birth of the FBI by David Gran. And I don't really know much about the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but it is one of the most famous branches, I would say, like of the government in terms of investigation units. This book is a really popular book. I saw it for so cheap, I forget exactly how much it was. I'm seeing this name come up a bunch, I'm seeing this cover, and I don't know a lot about the FBI or the history or anything like that. Let's give it a shot. There's low risk, high reward. As I was checking out, the lady who was checking out was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you found this for so cheap, because it's flies off the shelves usually. Then I picked up a bunch of books, guys. Luckily, most of them were used. They all have like used or bargain stickers on them because, again, I am my grandfather's granddaughter. I don't care if you don't understand that. The next book I got is The Adventures of Henry Thoreau, A Young Man's Unlikely Path to Walden Pond by Michael Sims. I read Walden, I think in like 6th grade, I believe it was, so a while ago, but I liked it, and I think Henry Thoreau's whole activism when it came to, well, just peace in general, but also conservationism, I thought that's really interesting, and I think it'd be cool to have that chronicles the life of one of America's like most famous, or one of its highly famous authors. The next book I saw relatively early on when at this bookstore, and that is Oracle Bones, A Journey Through Time in China by Peter Hessler. This is a book about China, so of course I was gonna freaking pick it up. As you guys know, China is a subject area that I've been doing a lot of research in lately for a very valid reason, in my opinion. I think it's come up on a couple of lists of mine in terms of books to read about China. So when I saw this in the bargain like used section, I was just like, well, I have to pick this up because it is about China. It's about the history of China, and that is something that I am trying desperately to become better at and more knowledgeable. Even though all of my Chinese friends say don't attempt, there's too much history, I still feel it is in my best interest to do that. So that is what I'm trying to do. I'm reading a variety of topics. This, I think, is going to go, just based on the back cover, is gonna go a Son of the Revolution and Wild Swans route, where you're going to be following just like ordinary people who are going through and living through these massive changes in Chinese and world history. That sounds really interesting to me. I've been liking that in my readings because I think it's very important to see how not only did it affect, you know, the entire country and the world, but also how it affected the individual people, because sometimes that is lost in tellings of history and studies of history. Next one is A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier by Ishmael, and of course it's covering it up, Bea. Being a child soldier is just very sad. Watched this movie, I forget what it was. I'll post it if I find it. And it was heartbreaking. I've seen this come up on so many lists of just books that you should read in general, and I figured that I would pick this one up because it is not only a very sad issue and a very important issue, but it's also very topical because child soldiers and the psychology and indoctrination of these children into being a child soldier isn't an issue that is solely in one region. As you can imagine, this tells Ishmael's story. He was 12, I believe, in the slave jacket. 13 when he became a child soldier, and I think this is going to be a very harrowing read, but I also think it is going to be very, very important. So excited to get to this one too. I'm always excited to get to books because I don't ever pick up books that I'm not excited to get to, or I don't want to read at some point in the future. So I feel like kind of a broken record every time I say I'm excited to read a book. Also, there's no baby in this video because, well, my brother decided to kidnap her. He didn't kidnap her, he just decided he wanted to snuggle with her because he's moving in the next couple of days, and he was like, I need extra cuddles, and I was like, fine, you can take the baby. I will just have to satisfy myself with taking lots of cuddles from her in daytime and lots of pictures like these. So there's your baby for this video. Anyway, connecting to the next story. The next one I got is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, Creating Currents of Electricity and Hope by William Kwamba. I cannot pronounce things. Decoding. It's not something I'm good at. And Brian Mueller. This, I've seen like this name come up a lot on Netflix because obviously it's a Netflix show. So I have not watched the film, and I don't think I'm going to until I read this because I want the background knowledge before I go into watching the show or the movie. This tells an incredible story about this young man's want to help his community and his ability to do that through reading his intelligence and ingenuity. And I think that's awesome, because I think this is one of those stories where it's like you can make a difference in your small community that can make a giant impact, and all you really have to do is, for that reason, this is going to be a very, very interesting. The next book I picked up, which kind of isn't surprising, I think, in my opinion, and that is The Creative Spark: How Imagination Made Humans Exceptional by Agustin Fuentes. I think this is going to be a very anthropology or anthropology for the every person, or anthropology adjacent books, where it is going to talk about what makes us humans unique and different from our close relatives like the bonobos and the chimpanzees. This just sounded so interesting and right up my alley as an anthropologist, that I just was like, I'm gonna pick this up. Literally, I saw it on the shelf and it was like, and I gravitated to it. So next is The Tale of Genji. This is 2 volumes. I'm not sure if this is more than 2 volumes or not. In my quest to read more classics and try to read classics from all over the world, I thought it'd be a good idea to read this. I have no clue what it's about, but it looked really interesting. It is a Japanese classic, so I thought it would be really interesting to do forays into classics that aren't as Eurocentric as most of the classics that I've been reading lately are, which is a problem and that I should change. Coronavirus just makes regular book shopping the way I like to book shop, which is in an actual bookstore, difficult. What I love about shopping in bookstores and actual physical locations is the treasures you will find. It's like a treasure hunt and it's so much fun. This follows a courtesan in the Heian Japanese period of history. That just sounds really interesting. I'm very excited to get into court politics that I think are going to be happening in all the court drama or the courtesan drama, all of this stuff in Japanese history, and it'll be really awesome to learn more about the Heian period. I'm just excited to read more books. That sounds lame, but that's where I am. The next book is a book that was published recently, and I was really excited that I could find it for as cheap as I was able to find it, and that is The Pioneers by David McCullough. And I have some of his other work up there. He wrote the quintessential John Adams biography, you know, that one. And this is, I think, his latest work to come out, and it is about, I didn't even read the subtitle. Wow, it's The Pioneers, the heroic story of the settlers who brought the American ideal to the West. I think it will be really interesting to see how David balances the push westward also with the displacement of Native Americans and also genocide of Native. I think it will be really interesting looking at that dynamic. I hope that that plays a lot in the book. I don't know. I haven't read it. I haven't read any reviews, but this looked really interesting and was one of the books that I saw in my research for the BookTube prize. The next is older book, and that is God's Secretaries: The Making of the King James Bible by Adam Nicholson. I know I learned about this in my AP European History class, but I don't remember a lot about the shenaniganery that went down into making the King James Bible. And since the King James Bible is such a influential translation of the Bible, at least here in America, it's one that a lot of evangelicals tout as the one and only version. I think it'd be really interesting to look into the history of it. I just am very curious about that, and religion is one of my favorite topics actually to research, especially Christianity, because it's so prevalent in America. I think that whole history and seeing how the history of the Bible and how it's used in different branches of Christianity and is very interesting. And I think that the politics that go into certain translations are always very interesting. That's why I got this book. Next Okay, I'm very excited. This next book is Difficult Women by Roxane Gay, and Roxane Gay is one of an author that I've been meaning to read because of how influential she is, or how important she is in terms of feminist writing. This is the one I was drawn to. I don't know if this is the best one to start with, so if anyone can tell me if there's a better one to start with, let me know. But otherwise, I'm gonna start with this one because it just literally tells a bunch of different women's stories, and I think that this is kind of not necessarily uplifting, but it's kind of a book just about female women just owning being women. It looked interesting. Also, the cover is really beautiful. Next is the Catalogue of Shipwrecked books. Christopher Columbus, His Son, and the Quest to Build the World's Greatest Library by Edward Wilson Lee. Again, this was one of the books that came out in 2019. It was one of the books I researched for the BookTube prize. This one seemed really interesting to me. What is Christopher Columbus, the asshole that he is? What his connection to books and libraries? And it kind of seems to me, just by like reading the inside jacket, that like he himself doesn't really have much connection. I could be wrong, I haven't read the book yet, but it's more of his son has a lot of connections with printmaking and working with the printing press. I'm very interested to see what this book has to say. This pile is getting dangerously close to being visible on screen. The next book I got is Catherine the Great, A Portrait of a Woman by Robert K. Massey. This is a book that is recommended by a lot of people about Russian history, and I don't know a lot about Russian history. This seems to be really interesting, and I've actually checked out the audiobook for this, and I didn't get a chance to read it. It's just a biography that is about a woman that led a very interesting life and held a lot of power in her life, that I thought it would be a fun book and really interesting read. Now it is time for the quote-unquote big reveal about the book that I bought full price, because you guys know I'm not a big fan of buying books full price because I'm cheap. As someone who is a connoisseur of books is not exactly the cheapest hobby to have. I have like a list of books that I'm willing to pay full price for. It's just a matter of wanting to and finding the books. And for this book shopping experience, I personally made a limit for myself where it would be like, okay, in order to buy all of these other books on sale, I would only limit myself to one book full price. Enough build up. And that is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This book tells about Chanel Miller's experience trying to get justice for her rape. This book I thought was so powerful. I did actually read this. I had to read this for the BookTube prize. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure some of you have seen this book in some of my other videos that I've made because it's taken me a while to get this video out. It says a lot of really important things, and it's an important book to read. I loved it. The audiobook was also really good. This was just so powerful. Anyway, I've probably gushed about this book in a lot of other places. This book was like the only copy I could find of this in the store. Granted, I didn't like ask for like another copy, but it was like tucked away. But so I'm so glad I found this, because going into this bookshop, I had a list of like 3 books that if I found any of them, willing to pay full price for, and I found this one. Now comes the question of where on earth am I gonna fit these books on my shelves? And you know what? The answer is I don't know, and that's an okay answer. I hope you really liked this book haul. I'm very happy. I found some really nice finds, and I found some new releases for cheap. I felt like it was a successful haul. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. Let me know what you thought of my books that I got, if there's any books that you think that I should check out or consider adding to my list of books that I should pay like full price for. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye! Oh, this is going to bug me.